question?
Okay, now I'm really embarrassed. Thank you very much. You're very kind. I have time for questions or comments because it's, you know, I feel like the grade 10 physics kid talking to a room full of Einsteins. It's so, I'm hoping there's some good advice in the room or some thoughts.
Mr. Minister, I wanted to applaud as soon as you said that you were an elected gay man. And I'm sorry I didn't. My name is Rhoda Howard-Hassman, and I have a chair in international human rights, including gay and lesbian rights, at Wilfrid Laurier University. Yesterday, I went home, I called my husband, and I said, gee, it's a good thing that Wilfrid Laurier was willing to give me a chair in 2003, because I sure as hell wouldn't get one now. Because what I heard was science, engineering, medicine, technology, productivity, competitiveness, what is good for Canada? For the whole afternoon. I didn't hear a thing about the value of the humanities, the value of the social sciences, the fact that people like me, who've been working on human rights in Africa for 30 years, might be doing something that's worthwhile. So I'd like to thank you, sir. I never thought I would find the day when a politician would move me to tears, other than Obama. But you have done it.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I have a CRC in multiliteracy, so I work in literacy education, and your speech was brilliant. I've been in the States for 5 years, so it made me really proud to be back in Canada. My question is, doing research in literacy, how can you move from doing innovative research to actually having an impact on policy?
Well, it's interesting you talk about that, because I think we have to take knowledge and align it more to public policy decision-making, because you discover things. We have a fairly significant, can I just tell you a short story?
Sure.
When I was mayor of Winnipeg, we were going on an e-government initiative. I tend to be fairly fiscally prudent. We were reducing taxes by 2% per year, but we were actually growing government because our tax base was growing, and we cut debt in half. So it would have outwardly looked like a probably fairly conservative fiscal policy, because we had the highest property taxes in the country. So one of these things, working with the unions, was an e-government initiative. So we're trying to train everybody into more advanced computer skills. And we ran into a problem that we found. We had a very high literacy and numeracy problem amongst our workforce, because we discovered that when we gave people small laptops and things like that, that they were still driving these huge bundles of piles and orders from the work yards down to the office. And we discovered that it wasn't because they didn't use the computer, it was because they didn't know how to write and they didn't know how to use numbers. So we started that program, and we reached out to literacy programs. But I think, and we ran it through the unions because no one wanted to go to their manager to tell them that they were illiterate. So I think part of it is, and we went to literacy communities, and what came out with the Canadian Union of Public Employees and a number of literacy organizations and research in engaging that, we basically wiped out illiteracy. But it was also a quality of life issue, because I'll never forget one gentleman who was about 52 or 53 years old standing up, and he said, you know, Mr. Mayor, I was getting an award for having done so well in the program, getting a certificate, and he said, you know, well, I can do my job now, and I'm not afraid to lose my job, and I don't have a secret and the stress of carrying a secret around every day. I just did something I never thought I would be able to do. I read my granddaughter a bedtime story for the first time in my life. So how do we get people like you more connected into doing that? And part of that is innovation in government has to be not just about adapting new technology, but being sensitive to the entire conditions of the lives of the people who work in a place, whether that's a school, a college, or a plant. And we don't do that. And I think that while part of our productivity challenge isn't as harsh and as sort of like rad grind from hard times, it's a much more imaginative process about trying to think about people's lives in the context of their community and their family and their needs. So I think if we start doing that, that gets us there. So, call your city councillor for starts.
Minister, I don't think you'll ever get away with such an easy couple of questions or comments in the House. But this House is a very friendly one. As I look around, I can't see the far mic. Is there someone up there, or that's someone behind the mic? Oh, one more here. Thank you.
First of all, thanks very much, Minister. That was really a wonderful view of the landscape. Of the entire landscape around which I think research and innovation. By the way, I'm not a Canada Research Chair, so there's no Einstein here. We can actually talk. You talked a lot in your address about the new geography of innovation, and made some particular references to cities and regions. Within this, I think that the province of Ontario should be commended, your government, for creating a Ministry of Research and Innovation in the first place, the only jurisdiction in Canada that has such a ministry. My question to you is, what about Canada Innovation? Who speaks for Canada on innovation? Who should speak for Canada on innovation? And should we be concerned about that?
Very good. I was adopted the same day my childhood best friend, Stephen Toop, who's now president of UBC, who he wrote. So I've had this sort of lifelong conversation with Stephen about things like this. And he and David Naylor wrote a very interesting piece in the Globe and Mail on the mythology of innovation, which I thought was a very good piece. And if you haven't read it, I would suggest it's worth reading. And I'll just do one completely crass plug here. We're in the final months of rewriting the Ontario Innovation Agenda, and I would just love consider it solicited now, but also unsolicited letters or thoughts about what you think the priorities should be. And I've asked this in every time, and I've been very, very, very lucky to have had a lot of input. But a lot of university presidents have started to engage their provincial ministers about the need for a national innovation strategy and platform. I've been meeting with Clément Gignac, who's my counterpart in Quebec, and given that Alberta and BC are probably the other region that has a lot of research about trying to look at what does a national talent retention, attraction, and financing strategy look like, and what would a national innovation strategy look like. And I think if you can get the principal provinces that are investing in this with the major research universities and partners in the community, we can start to do that. And that's something that I'm working on quite aggressively right now, but it's a consensus building project. My friend Tom Jenkins, who was helping us out with our innovation strategy, is now working on the national one, so there's an interface there. So I'm hoping that about 12 months from now, we will have both provincially and nationally, and more importantly, a community-based innovation strategy. And I think the part of our challenge that also, it has to include sciences and engineering. I mean, those are the easier sells because people equate that to economic success. It also has to deal with the environment, civility, humanity, and literature as well, because those are some of the outcomes. I just want to say one thing about the other end of it as well is not just national but global. By 2015, 1 in 3 people on this planet, it's estimated, will not have enough water to drink, which is less than 1 flush of the toilet for most of us. The species, the drought, the change in the environment, we're now into planet change beyond climate change, even if CO2 and anthropogenic CO2 emissions were stopped. We'll be dealing with the consequences of that. And one of the consequences, since oil caused so many wars, how do we get through this without water wars in the next century? And environmental immigration. We'll have many parts of this planet and subtropical areas particularly that will have real stresses on sustaining any kind of quality of life for people there. And since those of us as Canadians count our brothers and sisters, and as countries of origin for many of us, we're fortunately hardwired into them, we have to start getting prepared for a level of social and environmental and economic issues in this century that are going to be much more challenging than what we faced in the last. And the worst thing that we can have is selfishness. If we can't find a sense of generosity, if we can't get back to the values of personal responsibility and some sense of sacrifice that we had in the last century, we won't get through this. And those of us who are in the boomer generation, we really have to take a measure of what our legacy is going to be, because right now I don't think it's up to scratch. I think on the environmental front, on the social and health front, we have to start to get much more aggressive about turning the trajectory of some of the impacts that we as a civilization are having. And this excuse that because we're 2.5% of the population of the planet as or of the emissions, we're probably about 20 or 30 or 40% of where the solutions need to come from. They're not going to come from Chad or Niger or Rwanda. They're going to come from here. Because we have a stable civil society and a democracy, and we have the resources and the ability to solve problems. And there just are not enough places in the world where that is going to happen. And so we need each other, and we need to be a country that offers hope and then backs that hope up with a lot of hard work and research and some open borders and some sense of generosity. And we need, and because politicians have such a credibility problem today, we need bright people like you who have a lot more credibility and a much greater ability to lead. And I just ask you, if you're ever feeling down, look around this room, look at the talent that you've got down the hall from you and around the corner and in your neighborhood. And if you can't be inspired by being right here, right now, at this time and place, in this amazing country, and for all of the challenges and difficulties that seem insurmountable, we are better equipped than any other generation in human history to take them on and to leave a better world. We also have a higher risk of failure than any other, which if you're an adrenaline junkie, should make you very happy. Thanks very much. God bless and keep you safe. Thank you very much.